Hello everyone, welcome to Informatica support video. This is Shruti from Informatica GCS. Today we are going to discuss about roles and permissions in Axon. In this video we will cover topics like significance of roles in Axon, that is, why is it required to create a role in Axon and how we can create a role and assign permission to that particular role. So let's begin with our first topic, that is significance of roles in Axon. In Axon, we create different types of object, for example, glossary, dataset, system, attributes, etc. And for each of these objects, either we define a particular user or a set of users as stakeholders. Stakeholders are nothing but they only are accountable for all the activities related to that particular object and also for the maintenance of that particular object. In order to define a particular user as a stakeholder for any object, we have to assign a role to that user for that particular object. And that role has certain privileges attached with it. Those privileges are nothing but the permissions. So let's understand it with an example. In Axon, we have three types of users: super admin, admin, and a web user. And these three users has different set of privileges attached to them. Now, a web user only can view the public items. He cannot edit any of the existing item and he cannot create a new item. But now, suppose we have created a new role, that is, suppose data steward, and we have created it for datasets. And we have also assigned permission edit to this role. Now we have assigned this role to the web user, and as soon as we assign this role to the web user, he will be able to edit for all the existing datasets, as we have assigned such a role to him that has edit privileges attached with it. In Axon, there are already some default roles present and also some default permissions attached to them. But anytime we can edit it as per our requirement, or if needed we can also create new roles and can assign permissions to that. So now let's see how to create a new role in Axon. But before that, there is one important point to be noted down, that we create roles on the facet level. We don't create any role for a particular object. For example, if we are creating a role for glossary, then it will be there for all the glossaries. It is not like we are creating it for a particular glossary A. We can assign this role for all the glossaries. So now let's take a look on how to create a role in Axon. This is our Axon UI, and I have already logged in as an admin user because only an admin user can access to the admin panel to create a new role or to assign a permission to that role. So now let's go to the admin panel. Now first we have to create a role and then only we can assign a permission to that role. For that we need to first go to this DG operating model, then roles and responsibilities. Thereafter, in order to create a new role, we need to switch to edit mode. Suppose we are going to create a new role for the process. So firstly, we have to define a name for our new role. Let's say process role. Then a brief description about this role. Then we have to select a module or the facet for which we want to create this role. So we are creating this role for process. I have selected process here. Then we can select the role type. I have selected ownership role here, and there is one more option that we can choose, that is default. So if we will check this option default, then that means if we will create any of the new process, then by default this role will be assigned to the user who is creating that process. Now as we have created our role, we can save this new role. And once this will get saved, we can then switch to Role Permissions tab to assign the required permission to our newly created role. Again, we need to switch to Edit mode. Now, here We can first select our particular facet for which we have created that role. So in our case, it was process. Now if we will click here, it will already show us all the existing roles present for this facet. So our role is test process role. Now suppose I want to provide edit permission for this. After assigning this permission to the role, we can just save it. Now we have successfully created a new role for process, as well as we have assigned permission to that particular role. We can check regarding it by going to a particular process object. Let me add processes here. Let me create a new process so that we can define stakeholder for that. So this is our new process which I wanted to create it. Now let me just save it. Now suppose I want to assign a stakeholder for this process. So I will just switch to edit mode. Then I can go to stakeholders tab, and here under role drop down I can see the new role whatever I have created apart from this default roles. So I will select this role, will type the username here, say John or any other user, and then I can just save it. Now suppose here in place of John admin, if there is any web user and I have assigned this role to that web user, then whatever privileges I have given to this role, by default those privileges will come to the web user. So this is how we can create our new role and how to assign a permission to that role. In order you have any queries regarding this or you have any suggestions, please support us using the links that are showing on the screen. Thank you for watching the video.